Hi, my name's Steve. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Steve. And I'm a dope fiend too, and I'm recovered today by the grace of God in the 12 steps of this message. My life can be unmanageable whether I'm drunk, high, clean, or sober. If I'm in a problem with sinners in my mind, not the solution, I call it my spirit man. So God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, willing to know the difference, living one day at a time, enjoying each moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking to this simple world as he did, as it is, not as I would have it, and trusting he'll make all things right if I can surrender to his will, so I can be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy forever with him in the next. The only difference when Richard N. wrote the prayer in 1926, they said, take it to this simple world as Jesus did. And I'm a Jesus Christ disciple. But in AA, you can be a Buddhist, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Sikh, a Jew, believe in the great creator spirit of the universe. God is spirit. God is love. God is truth. What you call him here is up to you. Right? And I suffered from a delusion when I got here that my problem was alcohol and drugs, man. I had no idea, man, that my problem was me and how I thought. And I had no idea that my whole life, how I felt, was the most important thing in the universe. And it took me 17 years to realize that, even though the book says we couldn't control our drinking because we were maladjusted to life, we were in full flight from reality, we were outright mentally defective. Right? And it said I couldn't tell the truth from the false. And let's see. Sorry, I got a little bit choked up for a minute. So I guess I'll go back and say I was born of a 12-year-old mother. And my beautiful mama, who's now 89 years old, my beautiful daddy, who's 92, adopted me from a receiving home when I was 2.5 months old. And God has had his hand on me since the day I was born. And I never knew that, I never realized I had a problem. I never felt comfortable in my own skin. And I was always very concerned about what you thought about me because I didn't think too much of myself. And I was raised Italian-American, Catholic. And my mother always told me she loved me. And I was raised with a lot of discipline in my life. I had a healthy fear of my parents. And I always believed in God since I was a little boy. And he always answered my prayers when I talked to him. And like I said, I never really felt comfortable in my own skin. And sorry, man, I'm having a moment. This doesn't usually happen to me. So anyway, so I remember I always wanted to be accepted because I never really accepted myself. And I found my first identity in sports when I was a little kid. I tried to play baseball. I was no good at that. I tried to play basketball. I was no good at that. And there was a Pop Warner football team in San Leandro called the Crusaders. And 100 kids would try out, and they would cut down to 35. And I wanted to make that team so bad. And I tried out the first time when I was 10 years old, and I got cut first cuts. And I was happy I didn't make that team because it was so hard and difficult. And I realized that I wanted to make that football team so I could be a part of. Because I just never really loved myself. I don't know why. Right? And I had this wonderful family life. And then the next year I went out for that team. I barely made the team of 35. By the fifth game, I was starting at Nose Guard, and I was finally good at something. And I found my identity in sports. And I remember I liked playing football because it was like, look at me. Because I had this ego disorder called alcoholism, and I was always looking for you to tell me I was okay because I never felt okay with myself. Right? And I never used drugs or alcohol until my senior year. I was an all-Alameda County football player my senior year in high school. I was team captain of the wrestling team. And I started drinking and smoking weed my senior year. And it became paramount to everything else that I did. It became more important than anything. And all I had cared about was football. And when I started drinking and smoking pot, that's all I cared about. And by the time I graduated, I was a full-blown addict and alcoholic. And 3 rehabs later, because my mother got to a point, she told me, don't call me unless you want to go to program. And 3 different times, man, when all my scorecards read 0, I would call my mom and get off the street. I would go to a 30-day program, steal somebody's jacket who was at the program, sell it, and have my parents get the backlash from it. And then, and my mom, but I would call and go to a program a couple different times just because I had nowhere else to go, right? And I remember at first it was working for me, so I went to hard drugs, the cocaine and stuff, and then I realized that I could sell rock cocaine and it would support my drinking and other my amphetamine use. And I became this. I wanted to be a gangster. I wanted to be an Oakland policeman in high school, and I went from wanting to be an Oakland policeman to wanting to be a gangster. And because I thought, oh, that was cool, right? Because I just wanted this. I wanted people to look up to me, right? Because I didn't really think much of myself, like I said. And so then I realized I could sell crack cocaine and make about $1,000 a day. My third rehab I went to brought me to Sacramento. I met this meth cook from Rio Linda. He introduced me to these gangsters from the Heights. And I was selling crack cocaine in a street corner in Del Paso Heights on the street corner of Cathcart and Western. It was called the Strawberry Manors back in like 1989, 90, when there was like mobs on the street. It was wild, man. And for the next, I don't know, 7 years, I was in and out of jail. I got beat up by the Sacramento Police Department, had them draw guns on me, chase me down the street, stomp me out, ate sacks of drugs several times. By the time I wanted to stop, I couldn't stop. I remember going to jail for 6 months, and I'm like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. And I got out, and that very night I was drunk and loaded against my own will. Right? Obsession. Obsession means recurring, persistent thought or idea more powerful than which does not respond to reason. Right? You're going to go to prison, do it anyway. The doctor says you're going to die, do it anyway. They say you're going to take your kids, do it anyway. Right? Obsession. When they wrote the book in 1939, it meant to be beset by an evil spirit. And it sure feel like I'm beset by an evil spirit when it grabbed a hold of me, right? Because it's like something I can remember because when I get some time and I would relapse, something would grab a hold of me. And I feel sick to my stomach on my way to the dope man's house, the liquor store, knowing I shouldn't do it, but I could not do it. Obsession, right? So I got out of jail, and I really had every intention to stop drinking and using drugs, and I couldn't do it. And then I realized, my mother told me, if you keep going like you're going, you're going to kill somebody or someone's going to kill you, and it terrified me to go to prison for the rest of my life. So I started getting on my knees in the street, in the manors with all these gangsters and criminals around me, make the sign of the cross, asking for love, faith, strength, hope in my heart to make it out of this life. So I felt like the devil wanted to take the love from my heart so I could kill my brothers so he could put me in prison the rest of my life. I did. So I got on my knees and I'd pray in the street and I'd talk about God, and he used to scare the shit out of people, man, because I looked crazy, man. But I kept praying, and what God did for me, I went from driving a 76 Regal, being about it from the Bay, selling $50 double-ups, to riding a bicycle, a broken down bum, on West Capitol, staying at a $30 a night motel called the Redwood Motel. When Bill talks about in the book, I was enjoying the endless procession of sots that went on before me. Well, that was me, right? And what God did for me was I had felony warrants. The police were looking for me. And no matter how much alcohol I drank, no matter how much weed I smoked, no matter how much drugs I took, the sense of ease and comfort didn't come. See, because I drank and did drugs to put something between me and me. And I didn't understand that. You see, I have this disease called alcoholism. And when I wake up, man, all I think about is myself. My health, my money, my relationship, my kids, my wife, me. And I can't stand it anymore. And I got to take something or do something to put something between me and me. And I didn't understand that, right? So anyway, what God did for me is in 1994, I got to that spot where I was broke down, basically street person, bum. And I say this in my chair. Many prostitutes put a roof over my head and gave me something to eat when I had nowhere to go. God bless them. Everybody matters, man. Everybody's God's kids. Everybody's God's kids, right? So what God did for me was no matter how much alcohol I drank, no matter how much weed I smoked, no matter how much dope I took, the sense of ease and comfort wasn't there. And so I did what all heroes do. I called my mother and I asked her, could I come home? I said, Mom, I swear I'll turn myself in for a week. And my mama said, no, son, you got to turn yourself in today. And my mom drove all the way from the Bay Area and drove me to 651 I Street as my first act of real faith. Well, that's not my first act of faith, but it was basically, I heard this Father Von Quinn say, now, faith is the action of moving from a place that's comfortable to a place that's uncomfortable, which demands a risk, demands it. Like, what if I go to prison for 5 years? I had a 5-year joint suspended sentence for a sawed-off shotgun. And I turned myself in because I knew if they caught me, I was going. But if that alcohol and that drug was still working, I wouldn't have turned myself in. That's what God did for me. It was like he came down from heaven and said, you going with him or you coming with me? Right? It doesn't matter, man, if you just drank booze only or if you took drugs or shot heroin. It's an obsession of the mind. So powerful, no amount of human willpower could break it. And its only job is to make you restless, irritable, discontent, and to separate you from everything you love and care about, you to believe a lie and make you do it again. Bill Wilson called it cunning, baffling, and powerful. I call it the devil, call it what you want. There's one who has all power, that one is God. My book says you must find him now. Half measures avail us zero, nothing. Half measures don't avail us 50%, man. Half measures avail us nothing, right? Right? It's all or nothing, man. Right? And then here are the steps we took. And my book says no other way, right? And the decision, right? And so anyway, I turned myself in and I married my first wife. God bless her. She loved me when I didn't love myself, and she deserved better than I gave her. And we got her 4 boys at a foster home in Compton. And I coached the boys in football, and I started doing things that I knew a good man should do. I got a job. I worked 55 hours a week. I took the kids to church on Sunday. I put them in Pop Warner football. I coached them. I went to the gym. I started watching the NFL because I love the NFL. I started going to the gym. I started fishing, doing everything that made me feel good. And it lasted for 2 years and 10 months. And the shine wore off. Because I listened to people say things like, just go to lots of meetings and don't drink in between. That's bullshit, man. It says frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message of interest in all these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, our ideals must be grounded in a power grid of themselves if they are to recreate their life. That means you got to find God, man. And the truth is, man, and if you don't believe in God, it's okay. But you better be willing to follow directions. Because if you follow directions, you will come to believe in something. I guarantee it, man. Right? And so I got 2 years and 10 months, and I relapsed. And then I said, I begged God, don't let him take me back. And I went back to meetings again, and I lasted 10 months, a year. I got a year a bunch of times, 2 years. For the next 17 years, I was married and divorced 3 times. I built a business I still own today. I was never recovered. I was always waiting to fix the next thing. One time I ballooned up to 300 pounds. I was always trying to fix myself inside with something out here. And it never worked. I just didn't get it, man. I had this guy teach me the book from like 1998 to 2011. And he's always telling me, it's not about you, Steve. Never be about you again. And he'd tell me the steps. And I would parrot talk, the steps. I read the 164 pages with him backwards and forwards, 12 and 12, backwards and forwards. But it didn't do shit, man, because it was in here. It wasn't in here. Right? After my 3rd divorce, 13 years ago, I became as lonely as a dying man could be, and I made a decision. The word decision comes from the Latin word cicera, decision means to cut away any other option. Incision, cut into, decision, cut away. I made a decision not to not drink and use drugs, because lack of power was my dilemma. I had to find a power so I could live. It had to be a power greater than me, obviously. Well, where and how we define this power? Well, that's what this book is about. Its main objects to enable you to find a power greater than yourself that will solve your problem. And it took me 17 years to realize the problem wasn't the alcohol or the drugs. The problem was me. Page 64 says drinking was but a symptom. We had to get down to causes and conditions. Right? Then it tells you it was self manifested in various ways, which defeated us. Manifested, dressed up in different ways. The devil can dress it up so pretty, man. You feel like you can touch it, and it's not real, man. It's not. Page 62 talks about it, and you heard Abe say it. It said, if we could not take the first drink, it would be pointless and academic. So the problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind, right? Right. And then it goes on to say the period of premeditation before taking the first drink for this obviously is the crux of the problem. I'm plagiarizing a little bit, but I have everybody turn to page 62. Crux of the problem. Selfishness, self-centeredness was the root of my troubles, right? Basically, I call it, I had a hooray for me and fuck you attitude my whole life, even though in my mind, I was this nice guy who had a drug problem or an alcohol drug problem. And I thought, oh, if I just quit drinking and taking drugs, I'll be fine. I'm a great guy. Well, that wasn't the truth. When I did my first honest 4-step, I realized, man, I'm not a very nice person after all. Everything I ever did was because I was going to get something out of it. AA is the first thing I ever did where I was just doing something to give to someone else. Right? And you were here, and Bill and Bob wrote in the original manuscript, haven't had a spiritual experience as a result of these steps. We try to carry this message to others, especially alcoholics, and practice these principles in all our affairs. Anybody could talk good for an hour in here. How do you treat the person on the side of the road who wants something to eat? How do you treat the person who telemarket calls you and interrupts your day, who's just doing a job? How do you treat the person in the drive-thru? Everybody's God's kids, man. Everybody matters. And he read it. Our main purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. Right? So if anybody needs my help, it's my job to help them. Right? Because we all, see, who I am is not what I look like. What I am is in here. Because the carpenter man said it's not what's on the outside that makes a man good or bad. It's what's within a man's heart. And see, people come into AA, man, and they want all this stuff, but it says, first seek his kingdom and his righteousness, and everything else will be given to you. See, I believed in God my whole life. I found him through helping you, man. So I got a new guy here, right? Because a man came over and grabbed my hand 13 years ago in a book study. Have your hand, sir? And he said, God works to people through people. And I took my orders like a soldier, man. My job is to help God's kids. God's job is to take care of Steve and keep this deadly obsession off me. And the funny thing happened, man. When I made that decision to go be a soldier for God, this obsession to drink and use drugs has never came back, one day at a time. Right? And Abe said, we're not cured of our alcoholism. What we have is a daily reprieve based on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Not based on my spiritual condition. Because sometimes my spiritual condition is shit. It's not based on what I think, thank God, how I feel, or what I believe. It matters what I do, man. Because I do things in AA that I don't think are going to help me. And they help me anyway. I learned to follow directions. I was 8 years sober being Big Book Steve, sponsoring all these people. I had the privilege to teach a book study at the Salvation Army for almost 9 years. I missed 4 Tuesday nights in almost 9 years. And half them times, I was in a crazy relationship. I was walking in that place, my mind spinning sideways. I go get in their little bathroom, I get on my knees. And I would ask for humility and levity. And the Spirit of Jesus Christ would work in and through me. And I'd step in there and someone would overtake me and just come. And I teach this book study that this man, John O'Connor, taught me 13 years ago. And I would get done talking, and there'd be like 75 men between the ages of 18 and 60, 70 years old, man. Half of them been in prison their whole life. They'd have tears in their eyes. I give them hope. And I learned to love myself just a little bit. So I was finally able to love somebody else, and I'm married to probably the first girl I ever loved in my life besides my mother. I heard this was true, man. Really loved? Because love's the extension of oneself for the betterment of the other person. That's because someone else makes you feel good. All the other times I'd be like, oh, I don't feel good no more. Kick rocks. There'll be somebody else after you. I was this terrible person. I wasn't very nice, man. But I mean, how could I? My daddy told me a long time ago, you can't give away something you don't have. Right? And I learned to love myself a little bit through helping you, man. See, I believed in Jesus my whole life. I found him through helping you because God works to people through people, man. That's AA. If you're not out helping somebody else, you ain't doing AA, man. And maybe you're not like me. Because, see, I'm crazy. I heard people talk about peace in a day. Man, I will guarantee you this. If you do this, you will not have the obsession to drink or do drugs anymore. There's days, man, when I suffer because all I do is think about myself, and there's nothing I can do except help somebody follow the do the prayer, meditation, pray, call my sponsor, follow directions, do what I'm supposed to do. And there's still days, man, when I go down the rabbit hole, man. And maybe later on in the afternoon after I've been walking in this fear all day, I think, man, he got me again. I'm down here making a big deal. I heard Don Major say today, whenever I make a big deal out of anything, That includes my health, my kids, my money. Then I'm back. If I make a big deal out of anything except God and these 12 steps, then I'm back into alcoholism again because I'm just making it about Steve. And that's a hard one to swallow, man. But you don't understand what I'm going through. Because I done walked through some shit in here, and I'm going to be honest with you. When you decide to go work for God, man, the devil come in, man, on you. And I call it that. You call it what you want, man. But when you talk like I talk and you do what I do, man, you're going to have opposition. And I'm going to tell you, when I was on the way to my next relapse or divorce, I didn't have these kind of problems, these thoughts. They already had me. They already had me. That's cunning, baffling, and powerful. Self. Right? See, what everybody's looking for, they already have. It's inside you. And you're going to find it through love and thinking about others instead of yourself. And see, someone like me can't do that without 12 steps. They had to draw a picture for me. See, I was a chronic smart guy. I was like a fucking Einstein, man. I know. I used to be that guy. I know. And then I had 2 weeks shy of 5 years, and I'd be like, I almost had 5 years. Yeah, well, I got loaded again, man. What difference did it make? Right? I'm sober by the grace of God, man, and my willingness. And I also hear people say, God willing, I'll have a year. Man, God is willing. Are you willing? See, if you're an alcoholic and a drug addict like me, right? And God called us, man. There's this passage I listen to. All things work together towards the good for those who love God and being called according to His purpose. If you're an alcoholic like me, you've been called, man, because you've got no choice. You don't have a choice. It's like being in Vietnam and saying, hey, I want to go home, Sergeant. Well, too bad. You ain't going home unless it's in the bag. Right? I mean, we in it, man. So, and I'm going to tell you, man, working for the Lord, man, is the best job I ever had, man. It's the best job I ever had. It's the best thing I get to do, right? And, it's funny, man, because my favorite chapter is to the agnostics. But when I heard John say that, lack of power was my dilemma. They didn't say drugs or alcohol. Drinking was my problem. Right? And it said the whole book is about finding God. And then where and how? Well, page 55 says, we saw a spiritual release, but our mind liked to tell us it wasn't true, but actually we were fooling ourselves. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea of God. It may be obscure, that means blocked off by calamity. It means disaster, by pomp and worship of the things. But in some form or another, He's there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was part of our makeup, just as much as love the feeling you have for a friend. And here it comes, man. Sometime you're going to have to search for Him fearlessly. And it's going to be scary and hard. But He was there. He was as much a factor as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. And after we look for God everywhere outside ourselves, it's only there inside you that He may be found. And it was so with us. So if our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, that means old ideas, encourage you to search honestly and diligently within yourself. And if you wish, you can join us on this broad highway. Then it goes on to say, with this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. Right? Last sentence of that chapter says, when we drew near to Him, He disclosed Himself to us. And there's a chapter in this book I read, so when you draw close to God, He'll draw close to you. Right? And AA is all about others. The book says, problem selfish is self-centered. Solutions are constant thought of others and how we help meet their needs. That's it. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depends upon our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. That's the solution. It's that simple. But for a guy like me, I need to have the 12-step program. I need a sponsor to keep me accountable, right? I read a spiritual morning meditation by Don Majors too the other day, and he talked about catastrophic thinking. I suffer from it today. my mind's always writing this story, and it's not a good story. And my insane, catastrophic ideas, when I call Nick, my sponsor, they don't say, he's like, well, that's not what's going on, Steve. Right? And he calls me with an insane, catastrophic idea, and I'm like, Nick, that's not what's going on. That's not going to happen, bro. Right? It's funny because our crazy ideas sound crazy to each other, but in our mind, they make perfect sense. Right? No. Right. Yeah. Man, when John O'Connor taught me that book study, so he taught that book study to me, and he broke this book down into where I could understand it. He made it come alive with his enthusiasm. When he spoke, man, he was a 70-year-old man, came into a house, and he said, my name's John O'Connor, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm a dope fiend. He said it with joy, and he had a glow in his eyes. And he said, I'm recovered today by the grace of God. The 12 steps of this message, my life's unmanageable, drunk or sober. And I finally heard it. Well, my problem's not the drinking and the drugs. The problem's me. And my solution is helping you. God works two people through people. I did my first honest fourth and fifth step. Told him everything. Told that guy everything. Stuff that I forgot about, I was so embarrassed about. And he's like the 70-year-old man. He's all, I did that too. We think that we're like terminally unique. Like, you know, we're so bad. We've done all this horrible shit, right? And, yeah. And then I did step 6 and 7 with him. And then I went out and I started carrying the message like a drowning person grabbed a life preserver. And then I started going through the hard things. And the hardest thing for an alcoholic like me to go through is not getting my way. And I never understood page 61. I taught that book 1,000 times, sponsored a lot of people, man. At recovery, I got the privilege. I was going out to all these recovery homes, low bottom recovery homes, and New Start 2 in Del Paso Heights, about 5 miles, or about 5, maybe 2 miles from where I used to sell drugs at. God put me there. I was going to recovery homes, Sac Recovery House, and teaching this book study, man. And what was I say? Oh, and I had the same enthusiasm John gave me. And when I was teaching that book, man, I was bringing the book alive like John taught me to do. And it was something about the enthusiasm he had. Anyway, I lost my track again. But
page 61.
Page 6. Oh, page 6. Yeah, right. Anyway, man, sorry. I'm like tonight. I got a little bit nervous. So I'm sorry about that. But on page 61, it says we suffer from a delusion, belief in an illusion that we could wrest satisfaction out of this life only if we manage well. I taught that for 10 years. And I didn't understand what it meant. Well, what do you mean? How can I be happy if everything's going wrong? Well, it's not what it says. I was a victim of a delusion. I can only be happy if I got my way. And who's got a better way? Me or God? God. Sometimes you don't see that until you're through the other side of it. Right? Also, very powerful point. In More About Alcoholism, they talk about a guy named Jim. Right? And Jim lost his business through drinking and was a World War veteran. Came to CNA, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. Jim failed to enlarge his spiritual life. And do his consultation, found himself drunk, man, a whole bunch of times. Right? And then I have everybody turn to the bottom of page 14. For if an alcoholic, Steve, failed to enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, he would surely drink again. If he drank, he would surely die. The fifth he did deal with us is just like that. My book says promise. It's a promise. You must. Right? Very first page of Doctor's Opinion. Right? Dr. Silkworth wrote late 1934, a patient came to me who I came to regard as hopeless, Bill Wilson. Right? As part of his rehabilitation, he began to present his conception to other alcoholics, impressing upon them they must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of here, I'm going to read it to you out of the book. I usually can spit it out, but for some reason today I'm getting stuck. Point. In late 1934, I attended a patient who had been a competent businessman, a good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I kind of regard as hopeless. In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas, one alcoholic helping another, concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise of still others. This has become the basis, the foundation of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. And the whole foundation of the whole program is one alcoholic helping another. It says it on the very, very first page of the message. And it says it over and over and over and over again. You must. That's our job, right? 11 steps to fit ourselves to be a soldier for God. And trials and low spots are going to come. You know, God promised me a wife. When I first started, when I first made a decision, I'm like, what's a promise from God? A promise from God is a desire in your heart for something good. It's God's promise to you that it's yours. He don't say when you're going to get it, but it's a promise. And God cannot lie, and God cannot be mocked. Man reap what he sowed. So God promised me a wife, and I remember, and I thought, oh, it's this and this and that, and boy, I went through a lot, because I wasn't ready for a wife. 7 years later, I got the wife he promised. And then stuff happened. And man, when God gives you a promise, get ready, because he's going to mold you to be able to take care of that promise. Right? And I told my wife, I said, I'm a soldier for God, man. If you're going my way, I'll go with you. And then she said she'd marry me. I asked her to marry me 3 months after I met her. And I married her 11 months after I met her. And I said, you're going to marry me? I said, welcome to the war. She didn't like that so much. And then after we were married for a year and a half, my wife comes back from a girls' trip. She says, I want a baby. I'm all, fuck, I'm 55 years old. I mean, my wife's young. But I'm like, oh, we could try, okay? Man, this guy who goes around talking about Jesus to everybody finds out he's having his first natural-born son on Christmas Day. Find out she's pregnant. I'm just saying. And I got a 3.5-year-old son, and he's been a sunshine in our life. Hey, check. The baby's 6 months old. The baby's 6 months old. My wife said, my biggest fear is you dying. 2 weeks later, I get a call from the doctor because I have Crohn's disease and I got a colonoscopy. They're like, you have colon cancer. I met Nick at Cap City Men's Group. I had no idea what he did for a living, no idea. But he'd call me up and I'd be saying things like, the righteous man has many afflictions, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. And I've been speaking it, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace. Sometimes you got to walk the sermon, man. Sometimes you got to walk the sermon. I call Nick, terrified. Man, I got colon cancer. He's all, where's your insurance? I said, at Kaiser. He's all, I know the doctor there. I sold the robot to the hospital you're going to use on you. He's from Ethiopia. His name's Dr. Shiver. He's the best colorectal surgeon in Sacramento. I'll call him. He calls this doctor, man. And this doctor told Nick, he told him he'd cure me. He's all, cure him. We got great success with it. And I'm like, so I'm terrified. I go see this great doctor. I said, you're a Christ guy, right? His name's Daniel, right? I'm all, you're a Christ guy, right? He's all, I'm from Ethiopia, man. We're the original Bible people. I had no idea. The oldest form of the Bible is the Ethiopic Bible. The Europeans didn't write the Bible, man. And I used to have, I had a stepson, he used to tell me, oh, well, white Jesus. I'm all, Jesus probably wasn't even white, but what difference did it make? It could have been green. It's not on the outside what makes a man good or bad, right? So this doctor's like, he's all, no. And I was worried I was going to get a bag. He's all, no, I'm not giving you a bag. I'm taking your whole colon out. I'm attaching the bottom of your small intestine to the top of your rectum. I'm ripping your whole colon out. I'm like, you got to do that? He's all, not negotiable. It's a bad cancer. I'm like, okay. And I'll be honest with you, it's the scariest I've ever been in my whole fucking life. I walked into the hospital that day, but I knew it talks about the devil may wage war against you, but the angels of the Lord will encamp around you. And I mean, it was all set up for me, man. Remember, she dropped me off and I went in there and I was like, fuck. And I remember what made me feel better, I was talking to anesthesiologist and this lady comes up and tells me her son's on drugs and I start spitting this AA shit to her. And I gave her my number and her son even called me when I got to the hospital. It made me feel better for a minute, man. I get wheeled in the operating room. Nick's in the operating room with the doctor, showing him videos of me wrangling cobras, right? I do reptiles for a living. Who gets that treatment? Really? And I always tell everybody, you help God's kids, God takes great care of you. Right? I come out of the surgery and it went better than expected. I got to keep 1 foot of my large intestine. I got an incision in my stomach that big, and I recovered, man. And it's like some scary shit. But it's life. Life is life. Right? That's what they said, trials and low spots. If I didn't have everything in place like it was, man, and it's like, do you think that's a coincidence, man, that I knew Nick knows this doctor? Not to mention, Nick called and said, how's Shebrew doing these days as his rep? They said that he is a wizard on our machine. He's the absolute best colorectal surgeon at any hospital in California. I got that guy. I mean, really, right? I'm just saying. Hey, man, it says you'll be amazed before you're halfway through. Right? But if you're a real alcoholic like me, right, there's no middle-of-the-road solution. There's no middle-of-the-road solution. This is it, right? But the great news is I have this wonderful life. They never use the word easy because it's not easy. It's hard being a soldier for God. I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitively till I was 54 years old. It was the second hardest thing I've ever done. And it was hard, but it was nothing like trying to walk this path with the Lord, man. I mean, because we live in this world, right? Our feet are in this world, and we're being constantly inundated with all of this negative shit, man. All this bullshit all the time. Like everything that the world taught me, I had to unlearn that. Right? Like be better than everybody else. No one's better than anybody. Everybody matters, man. Everybody's God's kids. Right? I heard Chuck C. say this, and I believe it to be true. If you want to see God, look at your neighbor. Smile. One time I was restless, irritable, and discontent, driving from our place we go on the mountain. And I was like tripping. I was worried about my health, man, again. And this man was a construction worker. He looked up at me and smiled. And it made me feel better. A stranger smiling at me made me feel better. Saying hi to somebody and smiling to them may change the whole directory of their day. Chuck C. said, you want to look at God, look at your fellow man. You see God. Right? Because he made us all in his image. I believe that to be true. So, well, I want to thank all of you for listening to me tonight. You guys helped me more than I helped you. Thank you, and God bless you. That's it. Wow. Wow. Word. Thank you, guys.